Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm going to say happy Martin Luther King Day to everybody. Today is Martin Luther King's birthday, and Martin Luther King Jr. was a great American, a great man, and he helped make America better, made America a place for all races and all colors and all nationalities. Less than a year after his 1963 I Have a Dream speech out on the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., less than a year later, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed and signed into law, which barred discrimination and segregation in all public places, not just the Montgomery buses. Before he made his I Have a Dream speech, he organized a Montgomery bus boycott when Rosa Parks was forced to give up her seat and go to the back of the bus. So he organized a Montgomery bus boycott in Montgomery, Alabama, and the boycott worked. It was a peaceful boycott, and it lasted for 381 days, and then the buses became integrated. So that was the first step towards integration. One of the first steps, actually, outside of the U.S. military. And then he led a march to Washington from I believe, Selma, Alabama, to Washington, D.C., and he made the I Have a Dream speech. And then in 1964, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed. And then in 1965, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was passed. Now, African Americans were technically given the right to vote in, I believe, 1868 through the 14th Amendment, but the 14th Amendment was rarely being enforced in southern states. But the Voting Rights Act of 1965 changed a lot of that. So, happy birthday to Martin Luther King. Was he a perfect man? No. He was a human being just like any of us, and he had his faults. And we'll go through some of those. We all have faults. We're human beings. It doesn't take away from all the great stuff that he did, all the hatred and discrimination that he endured from white people. He chose not to hate back when he probably had every reason to, because he endured every discrimination and every oppression imaginable. But his father, Martin Luther King Sr., said you have to love everybody. You have to love white people, even though there are a lot of white people oppressing you. There's white people oppressing you, but then there's white people working and fighting for your freedom as well. And he did teach him that. I've read Dr. Martin Luther King's autobiography, and it is in there. And okay, let's get to Martin Luther King Jr.'s faults. Yes, he was a womanizer. His assistant minister, Ralph Abernathy, had testified that he had two mistresses on the side, and I'm not justifying what he did right here, but he was gone away from his family most of the time fighting for the civil rights movement. And he is a man just like all of us, and he had a very stressful job doing what he did, fighting for equality and fighting for freedom, and he had two mistresses on the side, at least two that we know of. The FBI did tap his phones at the request of J. Edgar Hoover, which was wrong. That Dr. Martin Luther King has never been linked to the Communist Party. He's never been linked to having any ideals of communism, but J. Edgar Hoover thought he was a communist, and J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI found that he had mistresses and said they were going to release the tapes if he didn't commit suicide. And that was a bad ploy on J. Edgar Hoover. There were a lot of agents that really did not believe in what J. Edgar Hoover was doing there, but they were scared to say something. Now, J. Edgar Hoover did do some good things in 1964 when the civil rights, three civil rights workers in Mississippi got killed. He sent the FBI down there, and the FBI arrested the perpetrators. I recommend that you guys check out Mississippi Burning if you guys have not seen that movie. It's not completely historically accurate, but nevertheless, it's a really good movie and tells the stories of the three civil rights workers that were murdered in Neshoba County, Mississippi. Okay, and then on top of that, Dr. Martin Luther King, I mean, the kids were always fed, they were always clothed, and they had a roof over their head, but at the same time, he didn't leave a will for their kids. He didn't have a will, period, when he died. And the kids are still in dispute over the family money to this day. The brothers and sisters are always at each other's throats over his money. And then also, a lot of the money that he made did not go to the kids, or his wife. It went to the civil rights movement, and it went to charities. He didn't embezzle it. He didn't use it for his own personal use, but the old saying, charity begins at home. So that's the happy birthday to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His I Have a Dream speech was one of the best speeches, if not the best speech in American history. He did a lot of good things, and because of his civil rights activism, we had the Voting Rights Act of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, thanks to his Montgomery bus boycott. And happy Martin Luther King Day, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless, and bye-bye. Bye-bye.